My name is Mikhail, and I spent 6 years, 7 months, and 3 days at Vector Corporation. I wasn't a star. I was what they call reliable backup. My reports were flawless, my calculations precise, my projects delivered on time. I didn't crave promotion. I enjoyed diving into numbers, finding hidden patterns like an archaeologist unearthing shards. My boss was Dmitry Borisovich Sokolov. Sokolov was my complete opposite. Loud, self-assured, with a voice heard 3 offices away. He wore expensive watches and loved to talk about strategic vision and global trends. He could sell any idea, even the most absurd one, in a way that made the CEO's eyes light up. And he possessed a unique talent, appropriating others' work with such unshakable calm, as if it had always been his. The idea for dynamic loyalty-based pricing was born during a sleepless night. I nurtured it for 6 months, gathering data from our supermarket receipts, building models, looking for correlations between purchases, seasonality, and discounts. This wasn't just an idea. It was my intellectual outlet, my secret brainchild. When the concept took clear shape, driven by a naive faith in corporate ethics, I went to Sokolov. I wanted to secure his support to present it to the board. I showed him the draft, 30 pages of text, graphs, and formulas. He skimmed through it, nodding. "Interesting, Misha. Very interesting. Keep working, polish it up. I'll think about how best to present it upstairs." I polished it. And a month later, at the quarterly strategy session where I, a mere analyst, was only present to prepare Sokolov's slides, I heard familiar words. But he was the one speaking them, with pomp, waving a pointer at a huge screen. "And here is our new, revolutionary model. Dynamic pricing based on deep loyalty analysis. This will change the game." The CEO, Igor Sergeyevich, sat back in his chair with an approving smile. I sat in the last row, and the world around me lost color and sound. Those were my graphs, my formulas, slightly rephrased, my conclusions. When Sokolov finished to applause, Igor Sergeyevich asked, "Dima, brilliant. Who worked on the team?" Sokolov, without blinking, scanned the room and his gaze settled on me. "Thank you. Yes, a great team. Especially Mikhail here helped with the initial analytics, gathered a good database. But the strategic development, the concept, that's, of course, our know-how." "Good job, Misha," the CEO nodded in my direction, already moving to the next topic. At that moment, I understood 2 things. First, justice is a myth believed by suckers like me. Second, if you want to get something done, don't tell anyone. Especially your boss. But that wasn't enough for Sokolov. The success of his idea, which the department now quietly called Mikhail's brainchild, went to his head. He felt infallible, and he began to clean up his territory. His next victim was Anna from the next office. A quiet, smart girl who did all the complex financial modeling for him. Rumors were he'd made a pass at her, which she rejected. And so it began. Nitpicking, missed deadlines that were his fault, public humiliation at meetings. I stayed silent. I buried my anger and resentment deep inside, like a time capsule in a foundation. But during a meeting about a failed pilot launch, again Sokolov's fault for pressuring the logistics department, when he, red with rage, pointed at Anna and barked, "It's because of incompetent employees like this that we lose millions. I demand her dismissal." Something in me snapped. I raised my head. My colleagues were looking at the table. "Dmitry Borisovich," my voice sounded strangely quiet in the sudden silence. "According to the logistics report, the delay was due to a change in delivery terms approved by you, dated the 15th. Anna worked with the data she was given." Sokolov turned to me. His eyes narrowed. He saw not a quiet accountant, but a threat. A small one, but a threat. "What, are you her lawyer?" he hissed. "The main failure is in the financial model. She used unrealistic numbers. It was a lie. I knew it. Everyone knew. But no one said a word." The next day, Anna signed a voluntary termination agreement. I walked her to the elevator. She was crying. "Why, Misha? I did everything. For no reason," I said. "Just because he can." The elevator doors closed. I stood in the empty hallway, watching the floor numbers flash. And at that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't complain to HR. They were long bought by Sokolov. I wouldn't look for a new job. I would stay. And I would destroy him. Not with fists. Not with a scandal. I would do it the way I knew how. methodically, coldly, relying on facts and numbers. I would make the system, in which he felt like a king, spit him out like a foreign body. Thus began my quiet war. A war of calculation against arrogance. A war of patience against vanity. A war where I had only one weapon, the truth. But I learned to sharpen it. The first thing I did was create a folder on my laptop, encrypted it with a 20-character password, and named it Audit. I began filling it not with dirt in the usual sense, but with evidence. I understood. To bring down Sokolov, I didn't need one major mistake, but proof of systemic incompetence and malice. The template was simple. Date, document, Sokolov's claim, actual facts, supporting document. Example from early entries. Date: March 15, 2023. Project: Logistics Optimization in the East region. Sokolov's claim, from presentation to CEO. Implementation will reduce transportation costs by 18% within a year. Fact: per current finance department. Report: costs increased by 5% due to unaccounted fuel price hikes and flawed route calculations. Evidence: scan of a page from the quarterly financial report, logistics section, quote from a meeting minutes where I warned about fuel price risks. I became the archivist of his failures. But it wasn't enough. All these mistakes could be written off as operational issues, changing market conditions. I needed to find something that couldn't be explained. Something that would hit his two main pillars: his image as a strategic genius and his sense of impunity. And then chance helped me. Or rather, my habit of reading everything. While preparing a report, I stumbled upon an article from a well-known Western consulting firm. And it hit me. I went to the corporate YouTube channel where recordings of our top executives' speeches at various forums were posted. I found a video of Sokolov speaking at the St. Petersburg Business Conference, Retail of the Future. He was talking about digital transformation of the customer experience. I paused the video, opened the consultant's article, and started comparing. It was word for word. Whole paragraphs simply translated into Russian with minor tweaks. He even stole a graph, just changing the color scheme. I found 3 more of his public speeches. In all of them, traces of blatant plagiarism. This was the golden key. Plagiarism in the public domain was a direct risk to the company's reputation. This couldn't be blamed on market conditions. This was theft and deceit. Now I needed an ally. Not an emotional one, but a pragmatic one. And I found him in Igor, the system administrator. Igor was another invisible cog in the machine, like me. We sometimes crossed paths at the coffee machine, discussing IT news. He hated Sokolov for constantly demanding he fix the printer urgently, or recover a deleted folder, jabbing his finger at the monitor. One day I asked him casually, "Igor, purely hypothetically, say someone uploads confidential presentations to personal cloud storage. Is that tracked?" Igor looked at me over his cup. "It's tracked. Logs for corporate teams and file share access are kept. But to request them, you need a reason. Like suspicion of a data leak. Security can provide an extract upon request from a manager or a formal complaint from an employee if they justify the risks." He was speaking my language, the language of procedures and justifications. I nodded. "Got it, thanks." Now I had 3 vectors of attack. The incompetence dossier, internal failures. Evidence of plagiarism, reputation threat. Potential security breach, security threat. But I needed a trigger. I had to force Sokolov to make a mistake so glaring in public that nothing could save him. And then I came up with Operation Mirror. I needed to create a trap idea. Brilliant on the surface, but fatally flawed at its core. And dangle it in front of Sokolov so he couldn't resist. I spent a month crafting the integrated cross-channel bonus ecosystem concept. It sounded impressive. The essence was to combine the loyalty programs of the online store and retail outlets into a single currency that could be spent on parking, movies, and cafes. On the slides, it looked fantastic. Soaring loyalty graphs, synergy, new audience reach. But at the very heart of the financial model, I planted a bomb. I artificially lowered the bonus to cash conversion rate for partners, used unrealistically low transaction fees, and completely ignored the operational costs of creating and maintaining such a platform. For any financier who spent more than 10 minutes analyzing it, this would be obvious. But for Sokolov, who saw only the pretty picture and buzzwords, it was perfect bait. I began the careful operation of leaking it. In conversation with him, I mentioned offhandedly, "Dmitry Borisovich, I've been sketching some thoughts on integrating online and offline. But it's probably too rough, needs a lot of calculations." I paused, giving him a chance to show interest. He did. A week later, I accidentally left printed drafts of the concept on the department printer when I knew he'd walk by. I saw him slow down and glance at the pages. The bait was cast. Now I had to wait for the predator to bite. The waiting was the hardest part. I kept adding to my dossier. Sokolov, already sensing a big idea on the horizon, decided to impress the CEO and demanded a rush report on the potential market for new ecosystems. The work, of course, fell to me. I prepared the document, but in the middle, in the competitor analysis section, I deliberately included a small, easily verifiable mistake. I incorrectly stated the market share of a key player. The report, naturally, bore Sokolov's signature. He didn't even read it, just skimmed the headings. This error became another nail in his future coffin. Now I could prove not only plagiarism but also negligence in handling data. Meanwhile, through Igor, following all formalities, I submitted a request to the security service. Grounds. As part of analyzing potential data leak risks for the dynamic pricing project, overseen by DB Sokolov, please provide access logs for project files over the past 6 months for an internal audit of compliance with information security policies. The request was signed by me as the responsible executor and approved, after my lengthy persuasion, by our department head, who was cautious but didn't like Sokolov. A week later, I had a dry, emotionless report in my hands. It stated in black and white that Dmitry Sokolov's account had repeatedly uploaded final versions of presentations marked confidential to a personal Yandex disk cloud storage address. Violation of Information Security Policy Number 1. Bingo. Then came the day of reckoning. A preliminary meeting with the CEO was scheduled to discuss new initiatives for the next quarter. Top managers were invited, including Alla Petrovna, the Iron Lady of the finance department. I, as a regular analyst, was to attend to present numbers if asked. But I knew today I would do something more. Sokolov entered the room like Caesar about to conquer Gaul. He started with a warm-up, talking about the amazing successes of current projects, my successes, of course, then, after a dramatic pause, moved to the main event. Colleagues, now for what we're all here for today. I want to present to you not just an idea, but a vision for our company's future. The integrated cross-channel bonus ecosystem. He clicked the remote. My beautiful, polished shine presentation appeared on the screen. My graphs, my diagrams, my words. But he was the one speaking. He soared, gesticulated, painted pictures of universal loyalty and cash flows in the air. The CEO, Igor Sergeyevich, nodded approvingly. Most of those present watched with reverence. But I watched Alla Petrovna. She sat motionless, arms crossed. Her gaze, cold and sharp, was fixed not on the pompous slides, but on the numbers in the corner of one graph. The very numbers I had chosen to catch a financier's eye. Sokolov finished to applause. Igor Sergeyevich smiled. Powerful, Dima. Very powerful. You can feel the ambition. Thank you, Igor Sergeyevich, Sokolov beamed. It truly is a breakthrough. The team worked hard, of course, but conceptually. Dmitry Borisovich, Alla Petrovna's icy, precise voice cut through the room. Everyone fell silent. The concept is undoubtedly interesting. I have 2 substantive questions. Silence hung in the room. Sokolov tensed slightly but kept a confident smile. Of course, Alla Petrovna. First, on slide 7, you indicate a projected 25% increase in average check size post-implementation. What calculation model is this figure based on? I didn't see the breakdown in the appendices. Sokolov's smile faltered. That's a comprehensive model, Alla Petrovna. It accounts for the synergy effect from channel integration, increased engagement. I understand what it accounts for, she pressed, not yielding. I'm interested in how. What variables, what elasticity coefficients did you input? Sokolov blinked. He was sinking into the quagmire I prepared for him. He began speaking in generalities, consumer behavior, big data, trends. It was verbal garbage. And then I raised my hand. Modestly, as befits a modest analyst. All eyes, including Alla Petrovna's piercing gaze, turned to me. Mikhail? The CEO asked. Apologies for interrupting, I said quietly but clearly. I just wanted to clarify with Dmitry Borisovich for complete clarity. In the model, as I understand it, the base bonus conversion rate for partners is set at 0.7. Is this taken from current terms with our loyalty program partners? Because, according to the updated contract with the Kvartal network, effective next month, the rate changes to 0.5. I paused. A tomb-like silence fell over the room. I hadn't lied. The contract really was changing. I had simply connected the unconnected, my fake model and an inconvenient, real fact. Sokolov paled. He didn't know about the new contract. He didn't delve into such trivialities. That's, of course, accounted for in the adaptive part of the model. He mumbled, his voice losing all confidence. We're talking about the concept. Alla Petrovna didn't let him finish. She leaned back in her chair, her face becoming completely inscrutable. Dmitry Borisovich, you're presenting a financial model to the executive board that fails to account for a key change in the contractual framework? And you cannot explain the methodology for calculating the primary KPIs? This wasn't a question, it was a verdict. The CEO stopped smiling. His eyebrows drew together. The model? It's under development, Sokolov forced out, sweat visibly beading on his forehead. This is a preliminary version for discussing the idea. We have discussed the idea. Alla Petrovna cut him off coldly. It is curious, but without a fully developed, transparent financial model, it is not an idea. It is fantasy. Please provide the complete calculation model. By tomorrow morning, with all source data and justifications. The meeting was adjourned. Sokolov left the room hunched over, trying not to look at anyone. His aura of infallibility had cracked. And everyone had seen the crack. The day after the meeting hung in the air with a heavy, ringing silence. Everyone in the department knew, but no one said it out loud. I watched Sokolov pace his office, his booming voice now a strained whisper over the phone. He was calling someone in IT, then finance, demanding all partner data. But it was too late. He was like an engineer who had promised to build a bridge, forgetting to calculate the load on the supports. And now, with the opening ceremony imminent, he was frantically searching the internet for a structural engineering textbook. By evening, it was clear, he couldn't produce a coherent model. He had neither the model nor the understanding of how to build one. All he had were stolen pretty pictures and loud words. Alla Petrovna didn't wait until morning. Her assistant sent Sokolov a formal request, copying the CEO. The tone was dry and brooked no argument. The next morning, Sokolov called me into his office. His face was ashen, dark bags under his eyes. All the bravado was gone, replaced by the weary malice of a cornered animal. Mikhail, he began, trying to summon his authoritative tone, but his voice betrayed him. We need to urgently assemble a task force to finalize this model. You're up to speed. Take the lead. It was a desperate attempt to shift responsibility. To make me a co-author of the failure. I looked him straight in the eye. For the first time in all these years. Without fear, without deference. Dmitry Borisovich, I cannot lead the development of a concept whose methodology I don't understand. You presented it as your strategic development. The underlying logic of the calculations is unclear to me. I'm afraid I would only do more harm. He stared at me, and I saw a flicker of realization in his eyes. The realization that the quiet, invisible Mikhail hadn't just disobeyed. He had struck a blow. Precisely, at an unprotected spot. And now, pretending nothing had happened was impossible. I see, he rasped. You can go. I left. And that same day, I sent the email. The single email I had spent months preparing. Subject: Collegial inquiry regarding risk management in the strategic planning department. 2. Alla Petrovna, head of security. CC. Igor Sergeyevich, CEO, department head. Attachments. 3 files. The email was dry as a protocol. Emotionless. I wasn't writing as a wronged employee, but as a loyal specialist concerned with the company's well-being. Dear Alla Petrovna, dear colleagues, in light of recent events and within the scope of my duties in risk analysis, I allow myself to draw your attention to several systemic issues which, in my opinion, pose a potential threat to the company's reputational, financial, and information security. What followed were 3 sections, each with its own supporting evidence in the attachments. Reputational risks. A table with examples of plagiarism in D.B. Sokolov's public speeches. Link to the video. Link to the original source. Dry comment. Using third-party materials without attribution in the public domain may be considered a violation of intellectual property rights and damage the company's image as an innovative player. Information security risks. An excerpt from the Security Service report on uploading confidential files to personal cloud storage. Reference to the violated security policy. Comment. Systematic violation of basic rules for handling confidential information creates a threat of data leakage and compromise of trade secrets. Operational and financial risks. A summary table from my dossier. 5 key projects under Sokolov's leadership with columns. Stated KPIs, actual results, reasons for discrepancy, per departmental reports. No assessments, just figures and facts. Comment. A persistent trend of overestimating forecasts and ignoring operational constraints is observed, leading to inefficient resource allocation and failure of strategic initiatives. I didn't write, Sokolov is a thief and a hack. I simply connected the dots, presented the facts, and built a logical chain. A person who steals ideas, violates security rules, and systemically fails to deliver on promises is not an asset but a systemic risk. The effect was like that of a vacuum bomb. Quiet on the outside, total devastation within. There was no loud scandal, no shouting. There were urgent closed-door meetings with the CEO. The lawyer was called in. The head of security was called in. Sokolov was summoned, for a talk. I don't know what exactly was said. But when he emerged from the CEO's office 2 hours later, he was a different man. Broken, aged 10 years. He didn't look at anyone, went into his office, closed the door, and came out half an hour later with a box. He wasn't fired in disgrace that same day. He was given the opportunity to resign voluntarily. It was announced to us that Dmitry Borisovich had decided to pursue new professional challenges. Everyone understood. No one breathed an audible sigh of relief. But when the door closed behind him, a strange, light silence settled over the department. The silence after a long, exhausting storm. Epilogue. 6 months later. I wasn't made department head. I was promoted to senior expert in strategic analysis and risk management with a salary increase. Now I report directly to the department head. They didn't hire a new Sokolov. The department was restructured, focusing on real analytics, not noise generation. Once, I ran into Anna at a cafe. She had gotten a job at a small but solid consulting firm. She looked calm and put together. Heard Sokolov left, she said, sipping her latte. Thanks. I didn't do anything, I shrugged. Circumstances just aligned. She looked at me with a slight smile. I know. Aligned. Like clockwork. I reconnected with my father. I used to always brush off his offers to help at the dacha. Now I visited almost every weekend. We silently tinkered with the engine of his old Moskvich, and that silence was more healing than any conversation. Sometimes, working late in my new, more spacious office, I look at the empty chair opposite. The very chair where Dmitry Borisovich Sokolov once sat, issuing orders. I don't feel triumph. I don't even feel particular satisfaction. There's only a calm, cold certainty. I didn't become like him. I didn't learn to shout, lie, or take credit. I simply stopped being afraid. I stopped believing in his myth of omnipotence. And when fear disappears, so does the tyrant's power. It turned out his fortress was built of papier-mâché, bright, glossy, but helpless before the fire of facts. The revenge was complete. It was quiet, precise, and irreversible. But it didn't make me happier. It just made me freer. Free from illusions. And now, when I look at a screen full of numbers, I see in them not just calculations, but the fragile architecture of human ambition. So easy to collapse if you find the supporting lie and press on it. Evenly, without malice. Just by calculation.